Welcome back to Next Gen Console Watch, our show following everything happening with the latest gaming hardware. I'm Damon Hadfield, and joining me this week, as usual, is Ryan McCaffrey, host of IGN's Xbox podcast, Podcast Unlocked.
I can now officially say Happy Holidays, Damon.
Happy holidays to you and everyone out there as well. And Max Scoville, host of IGN's PlayStation podcast, Podcast Beyond.
Bah humbug.
And we are sort of rounding the bend, nearing the end of the year. Of course, there's been a lot of great games released this year. A lot of Game of the Year awards are just about to come out. Astrobot, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Balatro. I'm hearing great things about Indiana Jones as well. But there are lots of games that were expected this year that didn't end up coming out this year. Some of those were actually officially delayed. Talking about your Assassin's Creed Shadows and Avowed, and some of them, like maybe Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater, was supposed to come out this year, but we're still waiting on a release date for that and probably shouldn't be expecting it in the next 3 weeks. So let's just sort of take stock of, what were the next-gen no-shows this year. Assassin's Creed Shadows, of course, in the wake of Star Wars Outlaws, a game that I like, by the way, but wasn't received as well as Ubisoft had hoped. Ubisoft ended up delaying Assassin's Creed Shadows into early 2025. Ubisoft has had some troubles. They just canceled. They're just shut down X-Defiant yesterday from when we're taping this. And ahead of time, they've canceled the season pass for AC Shadows. So I don't know. Maybe Max, maybe begin with you. I think there's been a lot of. I think Ubisoft has had a hard time building hype for Assassin's Creed Shadows as we head into the new year. What do you think its sort of chances are for getting people excited?
It's got a lot of competition. I mean, we could do a whole episode on all the big games that are coming out in February of next year, but I was kind of I was hoping that Shadows would be like a nice big kind of safe bet game. Like people always talk about Ubisoft games being a little bit samey. You get that, climb up on a tall thing and look around, unlock things on the map, go do the things on the map kind of formula. Which, too much of that, it does get tiresome, but it's been a minute since we've had a full proper installment. Like there was Assassin's Creed Mirage is obviously a slightly more focused Assassin's Creed, but feudal Japan is an area that people have been wanting to explore in that series for quite some time. And I think it really could have done well had it come out this fall, despite the, various people mad at it for various reasons. But next year, it's going to be going up against Ghost of Yotei, which I don't think bodes too well for it. And that's, on top of the fact that it's also theoretically releasing the same year as a new GTA. And, just looking at next February, it's going to be competing with Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 and Civilization 7, which I feel like are two very heavy hitters for anybody who has an inkling of interest in ancient history of one kind or another. As for this fall's games, it feels a little bit lacking, and this is something we've gotten used to over the years. Where I keep joking that Q3 is or Q1 is the new Q4, where like you get these holiday games that are just not quite ready yet, and they get pushed to February, March release windows. Avowed being another big one, which is also coming out in February. Again, Assassin's Creed's got to compete with that as well. The funny stuff is you mentioned Metal Gear Solid Delta. That was, on the PlayStation side of things, that was a game I was really looking forward to. I still am really looking forward to it. At this point, I believe it's a real thing. I think at the top of earlier this year, it seemed like it was really far away off. And then we kind of were like, oh, they put it in this official PlayStation sizzle of 2024 games. And it seemed like, sure enough, they're going to release it. And they had... I think they had a hands-on demo at some point. They've had lots of trailers, lots of pre-release stuff, to the point that it's like, okay, just give us a date. And there was even a date that leaked. People were looking at a November release at one point, and then that came and went, and clearly that's not happening. So if that means they're taking more time to get it right, that's fine with me. Though, it's kind of, it's funny to roll into this time of the year and just sort of feel light on games, to feel like there's not quite what you were hoping for. But yeah,
I don't know what happened with that trailer. It was very early in January that Sony released of games coming in 2024, and Metal Gear Solid Delta was included in there. So maybe there's some wires crossed, and people at Konami were sort of taken aback and surprised by that. Still waiting on a release date for that one. Speaking of Avowed, Ryan, in an alternate timeline, we would already have been playing that by now. It was supposed to be out last month. Now it's been pushed into early next year. But I think Destin actually went hands-on with that a couple weeks ago, and he came away very impressed. Is that right?
For not the first time as well. This was our second hands-on with this game, and it is the shortest summary of Avowed in terms of where we're at, like taking the temperature of it, we've been more impressed each time we've seen it. And I think that bodes really well. Every time we get to play more of it, it becomes clear. More of that Obsidian goodness, that Obsidian DNA in the game becomes evident. They've done a lot of work on the combat animations, which is something that was pretty obviously lacking back in, I think it was the Developer Direct showcase at the beginning of the year. So now here we are at the end of the year, games coming together, and yeah, it is a little unfortunate that it's going to end up pushing, and it seemingly they got it out of the way of their own games. Microsoft got it out of the way of Stalker 2 and Flight Simulator and Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, which are kind of all three out more or less back to back to back, and Avowed was going to be in that group too. But now it's running into that February buzzsaw that Max was talking about, where I guess the big advantage that Avowed has in terms of trying to get people to just fire it up and play it and get a look at it, because the track record of Obsidian suggests this game's going to be really good, on top of the fact that our own Destin Legary has been continually impressed by it each time he's played it. But that differentiator is hopefully going to be Game Pass. This is going to launch day one into Game Pass Ultimate on both PC and Xbox. So at least it'll just be there without you having to go out and spend $70 if you're already a Game Pass Ultimate subscriber. But still, yeah, it's definitely now up against a whole heck of a lot of competition in February, and would have been nice to get it this year. But you know what? Hey, we always talk about we're never going to complain about delayed games. It's just never there's never a real way to be mad about that in a way that matters. Just maybe a little, politely disappointed that we're not getting to play it sooner.
Sure.
But yeah, Avowed is definitely one of the games that we had pegged for 2024 on Xbox that is going to end up being 2025.
One thing this game has going for it is that it's probably going to be on the shorter side. The devs have compared it to Outer Worlds, which is an RPG you can finish in under 20 hours, which is kind of an anomaly. And I know that
20 to 40, I think, is where they're looking for this.
I mean that, and again it looks like Skyrim in action, but aside from the muskets, I guess. But anybody who's hoping for just a game that you can sit down and finish in a couple of weekends, this could be that option. I know that a $70 price tag doesn't necessarily go well with that, but if it's on Game Pass, that could work really well for it. And again, it's going up against multiple 60 plus hour RPGs, and then a game like Civ 7, which is going to keep tons of people occupied for the better part of a decade. So a nice sort of reasonably sized RPG sounds really appealing to me.
Well, it's not just games that are no-shows this year. There's also some hardware. On the Xbox side, we know they're at one point planning a mid-gen revision of the Xbox Series X. Adorably all digital now, I think the leaked document said. But now, we've gotten the PS5 Pro. But these days now, Xbox and Phil Spencer are even saying that a mid-gen refresh isn't even necessary on the Xbox side of things. So, of course, year's not over yet, and next week is a time when there tend to be announcements of things. But Ryan, how are you feeling? Was it a surprise to you that Xbox decided not to go with the mid-gen refresh that we'd seen from the leaked documents?
Well, if I'm just giving my own opinion here, I didn't like the look of that render that was in those leaked documents. It was this sort of completely opposite design to the. I love the Series X visually. I think it's. Yeah. I love that it's just like the monolith from 2001. I think it's a great with that sort of subtle curve in the top. I think it's a great looking, very minimalist console. And that image from the renders of the the diskless mid-cycle refresh, but not a mid-gen upgrade, not a Series X Pro. I didn't like the look of it at all. So they ended up giving us a 2 terabyte diskless Series X, but nobody's paying, or actually I can't remember if it's diskless or not, but the 2 terabyte version, $600. That much I remember for sure. And I would not recommend that to anybody. Do not pay $600 for a Series X, especially when there are, at least there have been, I'm not sure if there still are or will be throughout the holidays, but there have been Black Friday deals where you can grab a Series X for with 1 terabyte of storage for under $400, for like $380. But yeah, it's I also thought maybe we'd get some sort of teaser announcement or some official unveiling of the Xbox handheld this year after Phil Spencer more or less confirmed it to me back at IGN Live in the summer. And then he spoke openly about it again to, I think, Bloomberg more recently. But in that Bloomberg interview, he said it's actually a few years away. So, yeah, no Xbox hardware this year, but I'm not sure I mean, I don't see anybody really starting a pitchfork and torch mob over it, because PS5 Pro it's out. It's $700, but I think the general consensus seems to be, now that it's out in the wild, that you kind of have to squint to see the extra couple $100 there, and thus for a lot of people it's not necessarily worth that extra money. So I don't think Microsoft's really missing out, at least not today, not this year, by not having an actual mid-gen upgrade.
The other piece of hardware I think a lot of us were expecting would be the Nintendo Switch 2, and not to be released this year, but I think a lot of us thought it would be officially revealed and announced sometime this fall. That moment came and went, and now it will definitely be revealed, sometime next year. What's sort of our feeling moving into 2025? Do you think it's sort of a Q1 release for a Q3 or Q4, or sorry, a Q1 announcement for a Q3 or Q4 release? What seems to be the most likely situation?
Yeah, I mean, Nintendo, with how much success they had on the original Switch, there's really no reason for them to deviate from the plan that they had with the first Switch. Is just let that first batch of hardware get gobbled up in a relatively quiet time of the year by all of us, the enthusiasts, the early adopters, the lifelong Nintendo fans, and then they can get their supply chain, get their stock built up, ramped up in time for Q3 and then ultimately Q4 with the holidays. I just hope, I mean, I'm going to buy one day one regardless, but my hope, as I've said on this podcast probably 100 times by now, I need that big new 3D Mario game as the day one launch game. Now, I just got done saying I'd never be mad about a game delay. I mean, it hasn't been announced, so it can't be delayed yet, but if it turns out that big new 3D mainline Mario game needs some more time in the oven to get it just perfectly Nintendo polished and right, well, certainly I won't be too mad about that, but I would just be over the moon if the Switch 2 launches with that next big 3D mainline Mario that we've now been waiting 7 years for. It was Mario Odyssey was 7 years ago. We've had a great 2D Mario in there. Last year was Wonder, but the 3D ones those are the flagships, and that's what I can't wait to see what Nintendo does and how they leverage the new Switch hardware.
Sure. Max, what's your feeling on The Wolf Among Us 2 these days? We know that was announced a few years ago, but in October of last year, Telltale allegedly laid off most of its workers, but said, quote, all projects currently in development are still in production. So a year ago, they were claiming Wolf Among Us 2 was still in production. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's kind of the boy who cried wolf among us. Telltale spinning some tall tales. I do these, these yearly kind of look ahead videos, the biggest games coming out in 2023, 2024, whatever. And I can't be positive, but I think I've done this 2 years in a row, being like, it doesn't have a release date, but it's coming out any minute now. And this one, this is supposed to be out. They were like, December, it'll be out by December 2024. It was, it went from 2024 to winter 2024 to like, well, you're running out of time here. It's going to be a 2025 game, unless they just pull the trigger at the Game Awards, which is a slight possibility. But I don't have the most faith in that. And again, this is a follow up to a game that came out 10 years ago, 12 years
maybe more.
It's been a cool minute. So I can't imagine that there's obviously fans out there who would get excited about it. But as far as it kind of drumming up interest for a whole new audience, I feel like aside from Telltale itself shuttering, I feel like the demand for this sort of game has, if not diminished, sort of shifted in new directions. So I'll believe it when I see it.
Ryan, Replaced is another game you and I in particular have been waiting a long time for. At least 3 years ago, this game was announced.
Yes.
Of course, it's been heavily impacted by the ongoing war in Ukraine. That's understandable. But this past August, we got a 13-minute gameplay overview trailer. It didn't include any release info, but at least, we know that this game is still, being worked on. It's in good shape. What do you think? Is 2025 the year?
100%, or at least I shouldn't say that. 99% yes. And the reason I say that is not only you mentioned that 13-minute gameplay video they put out, but unlike The Wolf Among Us 2, which nobody in the public has played, and thus we have no real sense of how far along it really is, I have played Replaced, and it's awesome. The frame rate was not good when I played it, which the developers acknowledged. They were like, yep, we know. That's what we're still working on. And that was back in June that I played Replaced. But this game, Damon, I mean, it's got the potential for being like that, just that indie game of the year, where it's got something, it's got some special ingredients, and based on what I've played so far, I think it could be. Its ceiling is, and I'm not going to say this lightly, but I'm going to say it. This game, I think the ceiling on it could be a 10 out of 10 kind of game. If based on what I've played so far, if it all comes together, all polishes up, I love what I've seen and played of this game so far, and yeah, they haven't officially said, oh, it's pushed to 2025. I think they're just quietly working away, but or maybe they did. I don't remember if they put something on social media, but yeah, I think we can at least for sure pencil this one in for 2025. When in the year, who knows? But it's been played, it's playable, and it's really, really good based on what I've seen so far.
Yeah. Super excited for that one. Huge fan of Inside, just like Ryan, who reviewed that for IGN. Couple other tidbit games to pick up. There's Pragmata from Capcom, which is kind of a big mystery in the first place, announced years ago. In 2023, they announced that it was being delayed indefinitely, but that they were still working on it at least. It's described as Pragmata, this is the official description from Capcom, an all-new action-adventure title that depicts a near-future dystopian world on the moon through a deeply profound story and setting. And then in an update in 2023, they said, our team is currently hard at work making the best game that we possibly can, but we need more time. We will continue to do our best to ensure that the final product is one that is worthy of your patience. That was about 18 months ago now. Max, what do you think? Is this a Wolf Among Us 2 like? Is this one?
No. I fear that this is much worse. I fear that this is perhaps a Deep Down. I don't know if you remember Deep Down. That was a Capcom PS4 launch reveal, or it was revealed alongside it, and it basically looked like I don't know, Dark Souls in a New York City sewer. Again, it's been a minute. I might be mistaken on that front, but again, it was a sort of out there visual concept that never materialized. And this one, we've seen a lot more of it than we did ever see of Deep Down, but it does seem kind of like I don't know, pie in the sky. It seems like a very ambitious, big budget new IP. Mm-hmm. So I don't know exactly what the plan is there. I like what I'm seeing. It looks sort of like a more colorful, over the top spin on Death Stranding, but I don't know how much of that, how much of a market there is for that. So, and again, I hope we see something. You never know, but it sort of seems whatever it is, they went back to the drawing board a bit.
There's that Contraband from Avalanche that was, it's nothing more than a title teaser from a Microsoft showcase years ago. Ryan, is that something that you were hoping to learn more about this year?
I mean, it'd be nice. I had to double check before we started shooting this. 2021 at the Xbox showcase. So it has now been basically 3.5 years since that game was announced, and there has been actually zero mentioned about it since. We haven't heard a thing. Hopefully work is still going well on it. I mean, it's a co-op smuggling game set in the 70s, so there's some potential there. Avalanche is a talented studio, so there's reason for optimism, but if this drags on too much longer without us seeing something, and again, maybe this is one where on next week's show or in 2 weeks from now after the Game Awards, we'll have gotten to see it. I hope so. But if we haven't seen anything on this by next Xbox showcase, which would be a full 4 years of just total silence, then I'll start to lose hope for this ever coming out. But yeah, I hope we get to see it. But yeah, if we're talking about next-gen no-shows for 2024, this one, unfortunately, is a quintessential example.
Yeah. Well, there you have it. I think those are most of the big no-shows this year. There's a few others like Hollow Knight, Silk Song people are always waiting for, but it's never gotten an official release date or window. Hyper Light Breaker is the sequel to Drifter. They're still working on that one. Little Nightmares 3 and Arc 2. But the good news is there was no shortage of good stuff to play this year, and this just means there's even more to look forward to next year and in the years to come. We have the results from last episode's poll. What were we talking about? We were talking about handhelds. We wanted to know which upcoming but not yet officially announced handheld are you most excited for? Completely unsurprisingly, Nintendo Switch 2 is the one, since that's the only one that's been, well, the Xbox has, well, I guess the PlayStation handheld is just rumored for now, right, Max? That PlayStation hasn't commented on that itself,
No,
is that
they
right?
have not. It's completely rumors at this point.
Yeah, but Nintendo has acknowledged it, and now Xbox has acknowledged their own handheld. But Nintendo Switch 2, that's the one you're looking forward to the most, with 63%. PlayStation handheld is a little bit more anticipated than Xbox now, 22 to 15.7% there. So I guess that shakes out pretty much as you would expect. New poll in the wake of Black Friday sales extravaganza week. We want to know, did you buy any gaming hardware during this year's Black Friday sales? Did you get a PS5 Pro, a Nintendo Switch, an Xbox Series, a Meta Quest, or maybe a PSVR 2? Make sure to vote at IGN.com the day this episode goes live, and we'll share the results with you next week. And that's going to do it for this edition of Next Gen Console Watch. Thank you to both Max and Ryan. Thank you to everyone working behind the scenes here in our LA studio to make this episode possible. My name is Daemon. We'll be back next week with all the latest gaming hardware news, and we'll see you then.